All right, lesson 10, the flood. Look at the specifics of the flood today, a little bit of the specifics of the ark as well. And Genesis chapter 7. Now, Mike and Amber, you guys went to the Creation Museum, right? They have the ark encounter kind of there. Well, I know they're building the big one, right? Did you see a little bit of that or anything of that going on? No? That's something I would look forward to, I guess, is going there someday. But once they have that all done, that would be interesting to see. For those of you who don't, they're going to try to build a full-size replica of the ark. So we'll talk about that in here. And then try to give an idea, a sense of, just how large and massive it was for just Noah, and probably his sons who helped him to build, and just how full it was with animals. What must that have been like? None of us can ever imagine. But there we'll get a good visual. They didn't have that quite done there when you were there. I think they're still building, or maybe they haven't even started, but I know they have plans to do that. So that would be maybe a highlight to see someday. But let's start with chapter 7. We know that last time God gave the command to Noah to build the ark. He gave him a little bit of the directions, the size, pitch it within and without. He was going to be filling it with animals. Okay, he's going to send a flood to destroy the earth. So Noah knows all of those things. Chapter 7, we get a little bit more of the specifics. Okay, verse 1. And the Lord said unto Noah, Come thou and all thy house into the ark, for thee have I seen righteous before me in this generation. Of every clean beast thou shalt take to thee by sevens, the male and female. And the beasts that are not clean by two, the male and the female. So that's interesting there. We always think, they came in 2 by 2. But in reality, those are just the unclean animals that came in 2 by 2. All the clean ones that could be eaten, how many came in? 7. 7 of those. So make sure you think that. We always think 2 by 2. That is true, but 7 as well. Of the fowls also of the air by sevens, the male and female, to keep seed alive upon the face of all the earth. For yet 7 days, and I will cause it to rain upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights, and every living substance that I have made will I destroy from off the face of the earth. And Noah did according unto all that the Lord commanded him. And Noah was 600 years old when the flood of waters was upon the earth. So we've got all the animals on the ark. We've got even the fowls. The birds are going to be coming into there. What's the one animal that's maybe you have a question of? Kenton? Yeah. Anybody got a theory? I'd like to hear anybody that thinks so. Maybe this is what God did. Colin?
They're living in lakes, possibly, and the water covered them, and they just swam. Then they got on the water, down again, and they ended up in different places.
Okay. Kenton?
Well, he said that he would destroy every living substance on the earth, so I think they might want to do that.
Okay. Anybody else? It's one of those hard things to really know. I know I've asked them in the past to different people in that Bible studies. And the Bible doesn't tell us specifically, but it does tell us that all the other creatures were destroyed. So it's it would fall in line. God is, when He says something, it's going to come to pass. So it falls into line to say that if there were, 1,000 blue whales or whales at the time, then God probably destroyed all of them, but 2 He preserved. Okay? Or if there were different varieties of, sunfish, maybe He preserved 2. Maybe they were in the waters nearby the ark. We don't know. Okay? Maybe some of them were in the ark. We don't read specifically of that either, because then Noah would have to have specifically gone out and sought out those animals. So we just don't know. Okay? We just don't know. Some you could speculate and say, you have fish eggs and they were on the feet of a duck, and it was preserved that way. But again, that's the ones that are fish. And what about the ones we consider mammals, like dolphins, killer whales, have live birth, sharks. Those aren't really mammals, but you get the idea there. Okay? So, anyways, those are questions that we have, some curiosity that maybe gets perked up there. But verse 7 of chapter 7. And Noah went in, and his sons and his wife, and his sons' wives with them, into the ark because of the waters of the flood, of clean beasts, and of beasts that are not clean, and of fowls, and of everything that creepeth upon the earth. There went in 2 and 2 unto Noah into the ark, the male and the female, as God had commanded Noah. And it came to pass after 7 days. So how long were they in the ark? Amber? 7 days. That the waters of the flood were upon the earth. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, in the 17th day of the month, the same day, were all the fountains of the great deep broken up, and the windows of heaven were opened, and the rain was upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. And the selfsame day entered Noah and Shem and Ham and Japheth, the sons of Noah, and Noah's wife, and the 3 wives of his sons with them into the ark. They and every beast after his kind, and all the cattle of their kind, and every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth after his kind, and every fowl after his kind, every bird of every sort. And they went in unto Noah into the ark 2 and 2 of all flesh, wherein is the breath of life. And they that went in male and female of all flesh, as God had commanded him, and the Lord shut him in. And the flood was 40 days upon the earth, and the waters increased and bare up the ark, and it was lift above the earth. And the waters prevailed, and were increased greatly upon the earth. And the ark went upon the face of the waters, and the waters prevailed exceedingly upon the earth. And all the high hills that were under the whole heaven were covered. 15 cubits upward did the waters prevail, and the mountains were covered. And all flesh died that moved upon the earth, both of fowl and of cattle and of beast and of every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth, and every man, all in whose nostrils was the breath of life, of all that was in the dry land died. And every living substance which was destroyed, which was upon the face of the ground, both man and cattle, and the creeping things, and the fowl of heaven, and they were destroyed from the earth, and Noah only remained alive, and they that were with him in the ark. And the waters prevailed upon the earth 150 days. So he said Noah didn't have to go out and find the animals. The animals came in male and female, obviously, so that they could have children after the flood was done, and again, multiply and replenish the earth. Okay? But let's go back to the beginning of the chapter. Can you imagine, once again, being Noah and starting on this ark? God told him, and he had 120 years. Noah preached, and he built the ark. Okay? It was something that must have been just absolutely amazing to see. Okay? It wasn't just some simple little boat or dinghy, but it was a marvelous thing of engineering. Again, God worked in Noah to be able to do that. One could say it was almost like a wonder. Okay? So we got some cubit measurements, but let's make it into feet to kind of give us. The ark was approximately 450 feet long. How long is the soccer field? Do you guess? From goal to goal out there. Kenton? Nope. Colin? Nope, but closer. Micah? Pretty close, 255. So the length from goal to goal is 250. So if we went behind one goal all the way to Dutch American, we maybe add on 30 more feet. And then if we went behind the goal again to school, we might add on another 100 feet. So there we're at, I don't know, almost maybe 400. So then if we went and stood at the end of DA and looked all the way across the field past school and basically went out right to the edge of Columbus Street here, that's about how long the ark was. It's a gigantic, huge boat, 450 feet long. Okay? Probably about 75 feet wide. Soccer field is twice that amount. So it was long, skinny, in the sense skinny because of how long it was, but it was very wide, 75 feet. This room from front to back is about 30 feet, so you'd have to double this room and then still add a little bit more. Okay, another 15 feet. So that gives you a sense right there of how wide it was, and 45 feet tall. Taller than school. School at its peak is, it's like 25, 28, somewhere in there. So maybe if you went outside and looked at the tree next door, that would probably give us a good sense by the pine trees back there of about 45 feet tall. Okay? So very long, okay, very tall, okay, and nice and wide that it could fit all of these animals in it. Again, there's so many questions you could ask, right? About how did the lions get along in there with the other animals? How did Noah feed them? What was the food they had? Did they hibernate in a sense in there? Some of them that could. Just how did this all work? Those are a lot of interesting questions that we don't have. Does the ark necessarily, do you think, we don't read of it in the Bible, does it need a big post, a big sail to steer it around? Why not? Micah? Well, there's water everywhere. Jaden? Didn't have to go anywhere. It just needed to float. Okay? The ark just needed to float. So you wouldn't see a mast or a sail or any of those types of things. Okay? But Noah did it out of faith. And while he was building, what do you think the other men were doing as they were walking around that ark? Micah? Yeah. Look at that Noah up there. Hey, Noah, how's it going? You can imagine them mocking. So, what's this for? Well, it's going to flood. Flood? What's a flood? Well, God's going to send rain. What's rain? It's never rained on the earth. Okay? You can imagine these men mocking and ridiculing him every day. You can imagine Noah coming down and preaching to them, teaching them. Okay? Reminding them of what Adam had spoken, of what the others throughout history and passing down those oral traditions. They'd probably say, you old fool. There's none of that. You're fooling yourself. It's all a big hoax, a big trick. Come on, guys, let's go off and have our fun today. Okay? So we can see that mocking. Okay? So we've got the animals on there. Noah didn't have to go and capture them. They came to him. Okay, again, we talked about what about fish, something like that. The only other thing that we can say there maybe is, again, it talks about God destroying everything that creepeth upon the earth. Well, fish don't necessarily do that, but we would guess. All right, then we get the flood. How did the flood start? What does it say? What do we want to say here? What does it say? Jaden?
Rain came down, water came out of the ground.
Okay. Micah, do you have anything to add? Or no? Okay. Yeah. The waters came down out of the heavens. Okay? Again, the earth was much different then as it is now. The firmament probably had much more moisture up in it. So much so that it could rain for days and days, 40 days and 40 nights. And not just a light rainfall, a nice little smattering of rain that we might like for the grass and for the fields, but a heavy downpour we can imagine. And the waters that were in the earth, we know there's reservoirs of waters, they came up. And as they came up out of the earth, that is a good time for now the earth to begin to make changes. One large landmass can now be split into different ones that we see in the continents. Some places the upheaval would be so great, we have huge mountains that we think of today. Okay? Sticking up out. And then the water was so much, it was so great that it covered how much? How much of the earth was covered with water? Micah? Whole thing? How much higher than the highest peak? Amber? Yeah, 15 cubits. Said it's that much higher. 15 cubits, higher than the tallest mountain. So there was no place for even one man to try to scramble and get to. You think God would allow one man to hold on to the ark on the outside? Brody? No. That's not what could have happened. Okay? You can imagine the fear of those men as they hear this thunder and probably lightning. We can't imagine what sounds were there. Probably maybe they'd heard those sounds before, maybe they hadn't, but the water is now pouring down in rain and them running around terrorized and scared and fearful what's going on and into their houses. And then at their feet of their houses they can look out the windows and they can hear the explosions of the earth as the earth comes up and water begins to rise, and maybe they run out of their house and begin to find a place that will get them higher, climb into the highest point of the tree. But it didn't matter. There was no place that any single man or animal could go to escape the floodwaters, and all drowned, all were destroyed in that flood, except for Noah and those animals that were in the ark. Okay? The whole world that then was changed from the world that now is. It is not like the world that we live in. It was much different. And it was a picture, the flood is a picture of when will the earth be destroyed again? Micah? At the end of the world, at the end of time, God will once again, well, if you're listening on Sunday, according to Pastor Geiklar, will this whole earth just blow up and be destroyed, Amber? It'll be transformed. That's what God did here at the flood. He transformed the earth. He changed it so that it did not appear anything like it had before. And so, that will happen again at the end of all time. The earth will be changed again. Okay? What was going on during those 40 days and nights in the ark? We don't know. We can assume Noah and his family were caring for those animals. We can assume they were praying to God and worshiping. That was the church. The church was in that boat, in that ship. That's where God's church was. And you might say, well, hang on. But there was Ham in there. We know already he's going to sin afterwards. Yes, but remember, when we learned last year in the parables, sometimes when those servants came in and said, Master, Master, there's some tares mixed in with the wheat. The bad stuff is mixed in. And the master said, don't worry. Don't try to pluck them out now. We're going to leave them in there. And at the end, then we'll separate them. And that's the same thing. You might say, well, hang on. Ham is saved here on the boat, isn't? Well, it may be that Ham is a child of God. He sinned afterwards. He's saved because God only saved. But his offspring, we know, begin to be cursed. But we'll get to that later. But anyways, this is the church. That's the main point here. Here is the church, the little church of God that he has preserved on the earth. Okay? It's also very possible, you can look up there at that globe. What is the angle of the earth on that globe? Is it straight up and down? Or is it tilted, Logan? He's got a good angle. Yeah, the globe is tilted a bit at an angle. And what does that do, the angle of the earth? What does that provide for us here in Wisconsin? Different than it provides for somebody in Jamaica. Seasons. We have the seasons that come and go and they change. Probably from the tilt we have a variety of weather as well that's caused because of that. The amount of sunlight that we get changes. Different things happen with the tides. God changed the earth probably in that way at that time too. It was such a violent changing of the earth that all of those things happened so that, again, the world that then was, I can't imagine what that world was like. I mean, we could try, but not perfectly, not entirely, is different from the world that now is. Okay? So we see that probably happening at the same time too. So that we get the seasons. Again, if you go to Jamaica, you don't get the seasons. If you go to the North Pole, you don't really get very many seasons. You get two. Okay? You get a warm and you get a cold, very cold season. Okay? Now, in those seasons, you might have a couple months where you've got darkness and it's stormy all the time. But those are those ideas of the seasons. Okay? All right, so everything dies. And here, then, in the ark is the church. And let's take a look at now. We stopped at the end of chapter 24. And let's go on. Chapter 7, verse 24. Let's go on to chapter 8 here. And God remembered Noah and every living thing and all the cattle that was with him in the ark. And God made a wind to pass over the earth, and the waters assuaged. And the fountains also of the deep and the windows of heaven were stopped, and the rain from heaven was restrained. And the waters returned from off the earth continually, and after the end of the 150 days the waters were abated. And the ark rested in the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, upon the mountains of Ararat. And the waters decreased continually until the 10th month, and the 10th month were the first day of the months, were the tops of the mountains. And it came to pass at the end of 40 days that Noah opened the window of the ark which he had made, and he sent forth a raven which went to and fro until the waters were dried up from off the earth. Also he sent forth a dove from him to see if the waters were abated from off the face of the ground. But the dove found no rest for the sole of her foot, and she returned unto him into the ark, for the waters were on the face of the whole earth. Then he put forth his hand and took her and pulled her in unto him into the ark. And he stayed yet others 7 days, and again he sent forth the dove out of the ark. And the dove came in to him in the evening, and lo, in her mouth was an olive leaf plucked off. So Noah knew that the waters were abated from off the earth. And he stayed yet other 7 days, and sent forth the dove, which returned not again unto him any more. Came to pass in the 601st year, the first month, the first day of the month, the waters were dried up from off the earth. And Noah removed the covering of the ark, and looked, and behold, the face of the ground was dry. And in the 2nd month of the 7th and 20th day of the month was the earth dried up. Okay. And God spake unto Noah, saying, Go forth of the ark, thou and thy wife and thy sons' wives with thee. Bring forth with thee every living thing that is with thee, of all flesh, both of fowl and of cattle, and of every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth, that they may breed abundantly in the earth, and be fruitful and multiply upon the earth. And Noah went forth, and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with him. Every beast, every creeping thing, every fowl, and whatsoever creepeth upon the earth after their kinds went forth out of the ark. Again, we have all those questions about what it must have been like in the ark, and here we see the length of time there and there. That's hard to do, right? In the summertime, maybe when you wake up in the morning, having breakfast, and soon after you go to the window and you see the dark clouds rolling in. Mom says, let's stay in the house. Big storm is coming. And there you are, and let's say it rains for 6-7 hours, so that finally, just before dinner time, the clouds move away, the sun comes out, and what do you want to do? Now that you've been in the house all day, Amber?
Go outside.
Yeah, you're like, I want to go outside now. There's big puddles, and I don't care, I just want to get out of the house. I got to get out of the house. Well, we can't even imagine what it was like for Noah and his family here. Not only had the water stopped, but they stayed, and he still had to stay in the ark for a good period of time after that. So the patience here is pretty great. Okay? So what, again, must have been like, we just don't know. But if we look at a little bit of the timeline, I asked you to do that down there, kind of make a timeline for the flood, include the raven and dove and Noah building an altar. Okay? So the earth stayed on the water for 150 days, and then the ark rested on Mount Ararat. So after the 40 days and 40 nights, there was 150 days of floating. Floating. Waters slowly went down, and then they rest on the mountain. Almost 3 months later, then they could look out and see the tops of other mountains. 40 days after that, Noah finally sent out the raven. Okay? It did not return, because a raven survives on, well, what do you see crows sometimes eating? Crow is basically a raven. Joe? Dead animals on the side of the road, right? So all those dead carcasses laying now on some dry ground are eaten by the raven, or maybe even floating in some of the waters. He could land on some and eat them. Okay, then 7 days later, Noah sends out a weaker bird, a dove. It comes back with nothing. 7 days later, he sends it out again. It comes back with a little leaf. Sends it out 7 days later after that, and now it doesn't come back. Okay, now 2 months after that, God finally lets Noah and his family leave the ark. So they were on the ark for a year and 10 days. That's their total timeline. That's a long time to be in. Now, it was a very large ship, so you could go different places and move around and stay active and do those things, but you're still inside. Okay? And, well, we know in wintertime it gets tough. You know, it gets dark out at 4:35 and you're in the house for a long time, and you get antsy, you want to go outside, and you don't get as much natural daylight, so you just kind of feel, you get the blues, you're down in the dumps a little bit more. You can imagine that was kind of like for Adam and his family, but yet God was with them there. God was with them, caring for them. And here, these 8 people of the church of God were saved from the flood and brought forth, whereas the rest of that wicked world was destroyed. And you can imagine them being with Satan and realizing what foolishness it had been to mock Noah. Noah, the one who found grace in the eyes of God. Noah, who obeyed God and listened. Noah, who had preached to them, and they all laughed and mocked and ridiculed. And now when they come to meet Satan, they realize their foolishness. Okay? So, like we said, God will use the flood as a picture of the eventual destruction of this earth, or how it will be renewed. But it will be different because God has also promised never to destroy the earth with a flood again. So he will do something probably different, fire and brimstone, or how God will change this earth at the end of all time, we just don't know. Okay? But we see some of those. So I think we covered, lots you estimated the length and width and height of the ark. Some good guesses, but you can write down the exact measurements there if you want. 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, 45 feet tall. Okay? And the other ones there are pretty straightforward. We covered most of those there. Okay? So I'll give you a little different. I got a little sheet that shows a little bit of a timeline that you can see of the flood. Just what a miracle it was. But what's interesting is God doesn't always give us timelines in the Bible, like what happened between this thing and this thing. We don't want to see that. But here, God gives us an exact timeline of the ark and the flood, and exactly what happened on what days and how long Noah and his family were in there. We can see the exact date. So here God decides it is important for us to know.